else I hear? So, my mom's roll top desk, the top. I am going to practice first and make a roll top bread box. This is a Woodsmith pattern and I printed it off. I don't know what happened there, but anyway, yeah, I'm gonna try that. I'm just gonna make it out of a piece of pine. So let's do it. I have this piece of pine right here. It's got some bad ends on it. So I'm gonna cut those bad ends off first. The project called for pine, but this pine board ended up not only having bad ends, but the entire board was bad. Hub said it was the only piece of pine that was there at the store. So I tried using the best parts of the board to cut all the pieces. And I've learned that the roll top part is called a tambour, so I cut those too. First I tried on the bandsaw. I figured they'd be more accurate on the table saw, so I went over there and cut them instead. Then I planed all of those to make sure they were the same size. And here are all of the pieces. Then I sanded them all. The tambour door fits in the two sideboards, and these are my two sideboards. They're warped, so I don't think it's gonna work. Husband went to get me a piece of pine. He's gonna try to find me some more pine at a different store. So he's off doing that right now. Anyway, so that's okay because I need to make the template. Here's the picture of the template, and I thought maybe I could do this like on SketchUp or something. I took 2 classes that April Wilkerson has online, and I was able to make it. And then I printed it off to the size it needs to be using Rapid Resizer. Okay, I'll use my light box to put it together. It's kind of dusty. Whew. This way I can see it, make sure it's straight and stuff. I hope anywho. I think that'll work. There. Okay, so this is the template. This is the groove of the router. I am going to glue this onto this piece right here because this is my template material. Rapid Resizer prints off your image to whatever size you want, so I just needed to cut it out and attach it to the template. I left a sliver of line. I didn't want to attach it permanently to the template, so I used blue tape and then sprayed the paper with 3M77 spray glue. It really didn't matter that it stays on there permanently now that I think about it. But anyway, not sure what my thinking was. Then I cut that out with the scroll saw. Well, I think that's how it's gonna work, like that. Then I just had to wait for the new wood to come in. So while I'm waiting for that, I could put the tambour together. Woo! So this comes with, or this requires a jig. So I can make that jig. Yay! I used the table saw to cut a rabbit on 2 pieces of wood for the jig, cutting it one way and then the other. Then I set those up on a piece of plywood and I laid out the tambour door boards. And I found that they were warped and wouldn't lay flat. So I used a piece of poplar that I had and I cut some more tambours. And when I was sanding those, husband got back with a new piece of pine. This one looked better, but it had a ton of staples in it. So I cut some new sideboards and sanded them all up. Then, so these are my new pine boards. They're warpy. So I have to find some straight wood. Well, I'm going to take this warped piece of pine and practice cutting with this template. And there seem to be a missing measurement here, so I'm guessing it's about 9/16 from measuring that and that and that. Anyway, so I put a mark of 9/16, and that is where I'm going to put this in. And I need a square edge. I tried using screws to attach the template to the wood, and that didn't work because they poked up a bit. So I used double stick tape instead, and that worked great.
Right.
I was able to use the router on a nice, smooth surface with no screw heads in the way. I had a guide bushing on the router so I could run right along the template. The router bit slid back into the collet during the first pass, so I had to tighten it down and do it again. Then it worked that time. A little rough, but not bad. There, that's better. It didn't look quite right, and I figured that the board actually needs to be a little bit wider.
Okay, that's a rabbit back there.
I was so glad I did that practice run and got comfortable with the template, and also discovered that the bit wasn't tight enough and was sliding up. So that was good. Also, I discovered that that board needed to be wider, and the new piece of wood is poplar instead of pine, since we've had such bad luck with pine lately. So this is a nice straight piece of poplar, and I cut those wider. Now to cut those grooves into the new board with the template. Which is a tad scary. So I did one side board, but it went fine. Not perfect, but okay, I figured.
I'll give you some real-time footage. Maybe jump ahead a little bit here.
Luckily that's on the inside. Okay. Woo!
Then I took off that template, flipped it over, and put it on the other sideboard.
Then routered that one, and that was okay, but not great, just like the other one. But when I compared them to each other, the dado grooves lined up. So I'm gonna take it all outside and I'm going to stain it with ebony, but the problem is now I'm using pine and poplar, so I don't know how they're gonna look stained with the ebony. But I guess it's better than just leaving them plain. I don't know, let's just go stain them. Cyclone helped, and we were both happy the pine and poplar seemed to look similar after being stained. I also used a piece of monkey pod for the Tambour door handle piece, and it looked fine too. Then when all the pieces were dry, it was time to put together the Tambour door. I squared up the jig boards and screwed them in place. Then slid the Tambour pieces into the rabbited slots on the jig boards. Then made sure they were square, and I used some nails to fasten that first board in place. Then made sure all the boards were snug, and then fastened that last board in place too. Next, I took my piece of cloth, which is a Tambour cloth, but I have learned that you can use anything really. But since I've never done this before, I bought some cloth that is for tambours. And I cut it to the final size it needed to be. Then I used Quick and Thick, and I put glue on about 4 boards at a time. I used this glue because it dries clear, and it's thick enough not to flow between the boards. Then I put the cloth on them and used a roller to roll it down. Then I did 4 or so more boards, adding glue, rolling, and so on until all the boards were glued to the cloth. And the next day I was very excited to see how it looked.
It was pretty snug in there, but I was finally able to wiggle it out. And it didn't take much to get those timbers to roll so nice.
Woohoo! Then I tried sliding it on one side. Okay, here's the moment of truth. Look at that! It goes! Ooh, a little hang up there. Not much though.
Watch your ears, dear.
Okay. Woohoo! Then I trimmed the excess cloth and put down the tambour handle board, which was a piece of the molding trim left over from the desk, and put glue on another piece. So I set the end flap of cloth on that piece of board, then added glue on top of the cloth and added the handle board on that. Then clamped all those together. Next I added a dado for the backboard to go into, and this was supposed to be a rabbit, but I missed that, and it worked anyway. Then I marked the length of the false back and I put some dados where that will go. And this hides the tambour door when it's open. And finally, it was time to put it all together. First off, I noticed the tambour handle was too long, so I had to trim that up on the little bandsaw. Then I finagled with it to try to dry fit it together. This took a long time, and I finally got it together without the bottom board, though. And one thing I've learned is don't use a clamp where the tambour slides. It just messes it up, but I didn't know this yet. There, okay. Ah, is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Come on, look at that. It works. Look. Cool. Cool. Okay, something's messed up though. Oh, you know what? It's supposed to be cut. Here. Ah. So I used the template and I marked where it should be curved. And cut that out on the little bandsaw. Then used that piece to mark the other piece. I smoothed those up on the belt sander and then hand sanded. Then I had to restain those pieces. Well, that's gonna take 4 to 6 hours to cure, and it's 4 p.m., so looks like tomorrow's the day. Okay, it's time. Yay! Scary time. So let's do a dry fit and see how it works. I put some Johnson's paste wax in the dado slot where the door will slide. Then started assembling. And I remembered how challenging it was before when I put it together. And came apart. Okay, let's try again. Try it like this. So I fiddled with this for about an hour. And I still hadn't figured out that I was clamping it in a way that closes that space that allows the tambour door to slide. But it wasn't square, so I couldn't fit the bottom board correctly. So I quit for the night and I started again the next day. With a fresh new start, I saw that the bottom board was not flat. And it's all warpy. They're gonna get a new piece. So I measured, and this is when I slowly started to figure out that I'd been clamping this space closed that needed to be open for the tambour door to slide. But it hadn't totally sunk in yet. Okay, so I made a new bottom using the nice, flat, straight poplar board, and that made a big difference. Ah, finally! Okay. Woo! Now glue! Glue, my friends, glue! So I glued that in and put some brad nails in on the bottom. And all was good, I thought. There. Okay, the top. The top! I got some little hair sticking out there. While I was trimming that fray that was poking out, the tambour came out. And this was because the top piece is the key. It will hold the sides at the right spacing, not in too tight like the clamps held it, and not too loose to let the tambour slide out, but just right to let that tambour slide. But I hadn't figured this out yet either. So I took it all apart, including pulling it apart where I had nailed it, and I made that bottom piece shorter so I could slide the tambour in once it is all assembled. And while I was messing with it again, I discovered another warped board.
So this piece is warped too.
So I got a new one. So now I have replaced every board except the false back and the top. Now I could get it to stand by itself without clamps, and I could start putting it together as long as I didn't close that space that allows the tambour to glide. So I put glue on the back panel, clamped it, checked the width against the tambour, then put it on its side and put brad nails in to secure the bottom board again. And had to fix where I shot one brad in sideways by snipping it, then smoothing it with the Dremel. And I was ready to try sliding in the tambour door. I had it clamped on the back, and it still hadn't sunk in that the clamp was keeping things too tight. So it was tight going in. But once I let loose of the clamp, it was great. Then it hit me that the top board will be the one to hold the sideboards in the right spot. So I put glue on it and set it in place, then put brad nails in it, and the front brad nails went into the dado slot where the door slides. So I had to take that back off. Once I got that fixed, so I re-glued it and only put brads in the back corners. That's it. And now I could add the length back to the bottom. I wouldn't need to do this if the tambour door had been a few boards longer, because when it is closed all the way down, there's a space at the top. So if I add the board back, it will take care of that problem. So I glued it in and clamped it. Okay, now I've got to put stain back on it where I changed the board and where I messed it up. And it was so nice to be at this point and putting the ebony stain on it again. Then I thought I should put a verse inside. I put it on a little piece of wood, and I chose
Deuteronomy 8:3, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord.
And I thought that was the perfect verse for a bread box.
It is all ready to go, almost.
I just need to attach this verse to the inside, right back there. That's where it's gonna go. Just like that. Ah, just like that. Yay! It's done! And I'm so glad that I practiced doing this because, oh man, it was tough. And it works. Nice. Yay. I think that I would make this longer if I made it again. So I have to remember that for Mom's desk, because if it's not long enough, I just need to make more, make it longer. But hers is also S-curved and a lot more complicated, and so it'll be fun to figure out. It was tough to do, and what I learned is make sure your wood is straight. So thanks for joining me, everybody, and we'll see